Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier podcast for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV.
And I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Joe, football is finally back. The Sun Devils have been in camp for a couple days now. It's been good to see the maroon and gold guys getting out there. Big time goals and aspirations, expectations for 2025 in a conference that is, as always, wide open.
Yeah. Depending on when you're listening to this, we are right about a month away from the kickoff to the 2025 season, which seems kind of wild. We really, it was a hurry up and wait, but now we're hurrying up to get there, almost on board. Before we jump into the show, like Brad was talking about, we're going to talk about this wild conference. And for those of you who are watching along on the YouTube, you can see who we're going to join here with us today. Before we jump into that, quick reminder, a lot of y'all probably saw on social media earlier this week, we are doing our annual live podcast once again at 100 Mile Brewing in Tempe. For those of you who were with us last year, we had an incredible time. And hey, ASU went on to win the Big 12. So you know what? Maybe do we deserve a little bit of the credit for that? Who knows? But you don't want to risk not being a part of a good thing. So come join us. We need you out there. We cannot do it without you. It's going to be Saturday, August 23rd, week 0. There will be college football games while we are recording there. Again, at 100 Mile Brewing, 3 p.m. We're going to have a great guest list. We can confirm that the head man himself, Graham Orsini, will join us yet again like he did last year. And for those of you who were in attendance, know that he gave some great insight, had a great time with everybody out there. So be sure to join us. There's free parking, which, you know what, for me, that's a big deal if you're going out, anything social. Free admission. It's just an incredible time of a business that's very, very supportive of Sun Devil athletics. So mark your calendars, put it in your phone, commit it to memory, tattoo it on your forehead, whatever it is that you need to do. Saturday, August 23rd, 100 Mile Brewing in Tempe. Come join Speak of the Devils live at 3 p.m.
It'll be a great time. And as you said, Joe, I mean, science says 100% of the time we've done a live show at 100 Mile, the Devils won the conference. So, I mean,
mathematically it adds up. So
absolutely.
You got to be a part of it. And I've heard that, whoever you is, yes, you listening to this, watching this right now, it's up to you to keep that tradition alive.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So a lot of good stuff in store. Graham Rossini is going to join us, some other special guests. Like last year, Graham's going to take some questions. So if you have a question for the AD, the head man himself, come on out. Enjoy some good food, some good drinks, some good podcasting, and ask Rossini the tough questions. A guy who's very well adept at handling the tough questions is joining us for the 53rd time on the program because he has insight like no other. Sorry, just thinking to all the people listening right now, you missed a great hour that we didn't record, just chatting it up. And that's par for the course, pretty much like all 52 prior times because Ralph Amsden, welcome back. How are you today? What kind of takes do you have in store for us?
I'm just here to dance for the people. It's good to be hanging out with you guys. It's one of my favorite things to do. It makes me feel like I'm home when I'm away from home, and I'm looking forward to ASU living up to expectations and for expectations to be absurd. So it's going to be a fun year.
So you're looking for some absurdity from ASU by virtue of that logic.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess I'm looking for Arizona State to live up to absurd expectations. And if they accomplish what I think they can accomplish, it will be absurd, at least in relation to the history of this football team. So
a little cryptic message to get us started here. We can see what the expectations might be as we have this discussion.
So, of course, with camp just a couple days underway, not too much to get into as of right now. Our next episode will be diving into the early things of fall camp. So this is a good time for us to take a kind of big picture view, as we like to do every year, looking at the conference at large. And also maybe taking a little bit of a look on a national perspective because, of course, Ralph, you and George Rice used to do the Pac-12 Apostles, since pulled back and are taking a more larger scale view of all the offerings that college football has in store. But, of course, we know you keep a very close eye on all things, Big 12 with the Sun Devils. And this is a conference that is, of course, very crazy. So I think we got a lot to discuss tonight.
Yeah, let's jump into it. So basically, yeah, we're gonna touch less on ASU, more the conference. Go not necessarily every single team, but there are a lot of talking points here. It's gonna be yet another crazy season, I'm sure. Maybe ASU is the catalyst for crazy. You go from the Pac-12, the Pac-12 after dark, and just immediately the Big 12 becomes wild. But let's focus on ASU for a second, Ralph. So Arizona State University, they've spent one full year in the Big 12 conference on all fronts. How do you compare the experiences through year one in the Big 12 compared to what we saw and experienced previously in the Pac-12?
Well, I mean, the Pac-12 had kind of soured on football as far as the fan bases. The Pac-12 South was kind of undergoing a little bit of a changing of the guard, and UCLA fans nowhere to be found at games. USC fans pretty fickle. Arizona obviously, had a massive downturn, and outside of Dion coming on at Colorado, it's not like things were going well for them either. I think they were on three coaches in 3 years, and so the Pac-12 South, where Arizona State played most of its games, the energy was super depressed. It felt like the conference was going to die the entire time. You saw the rise of the North. One of my issues every single year in the Pac-12 is the schedule would come out and you'd look and you'd see games that you knew that Arizona State probably wasn't going to win.
When do they play Oregon State on the road? Obviously in November.
Right. And so, and with everything that Arizona State was going through also at the time, I think that it turned a lot of people off from being excited about ASU, because they wanted to know what the penalties were going to be. They're just seeing people transfer out of the program. They're just hearing that we're behind in NIL. They're not seeing as much change administratively as quickly as they want to see it. The investigation was drug out forever. So the really, really low energy all around for Pac-12 football, and I think Arizona State fans really felt that. But when you move into the Big 12, what Bill Walton would have called a truck stop conference, you have a bunch of cities where this is one of, if not the most important thing that they have going on. And I thought that would be a huge shot in the arm for Arizona State to be in a conference with Stillwater and Waco and towns like that, and to see excitement on the rise in the investment in football in Lawrence, to see the rise of Kansas State, or the supposed rise of Kansas State, out of the shadow of Texas and Oklahoma. I just thought it was going to be really, really great for Arizona State to be affiliated with those cities. I thought the fan bases would rub off on ASU fans in a big way, and I think the ASU fans are a good time wherever they go. And so I was looking forward to mixing in with all these different fan bases. And of course, it went way better than we could have anticipated, being picked 16th, finishing first. But there were still some hiccups, losing at Cincinnati and Texas Tech. But I mean, you completely outshot expectations. And I think people really, for the most part, have enjoyed being part of a conference where there is still a real emphasis on football, even if you're way, way behind the leaderboard as far as the payouts that come from the television contracts that are associated with the schools in this conference. And hopefully Arizona State can be part of what, gets this conference, not to the level of the SEC and the Big Ten, but somewhere in the ballpark where they're not, getting half the money. I think Arizona State is contributing to what could ultimately be a much stronger Big 12 in the future.
And so we're going to go around the conference here and do maybe one talking point or question, not necessarily for every team, but some of the main ones that the fans need to know. And so we're going to start with the team that Sun Devil fans certainly circle and target every single year, that being the Arizona Wildcats. Year one under Brent Brennan did very little to inspire hope and enthusiasm in that fan base, especially after the success they had the previous year. But there are some folks in the media who think that they're going to have a bit of a bounce back, maybe even get up toward bowl eligibility. So my question for you, for those who have a positive outlook on U of A, what is it that they're seeing that makes them think they'll be successful? And beside that, how do you see 2025 shaking out for the Cats, in terms of your opinion?
I have them finishing dead last in the conference, and I'm not trying to pander. I think they're going to be terrible. I think that there's some contributing factors to that they kind of have an excuse. When your athletic director flies out to the Bay, inks your new head coach to a contract, comes home, gets settled in, pats himself on the back, and then gets fired in the same week, that's a lot. It's a lot. And so Brent Brennan didn't necessarily get all of the support of the fan base last year because they went into the year with expectations. They had I think 5 or 6 first place votes. If you look at, I think it was Utah, Arizona, and Oklahoma State had 37 combined first place votes and went 4-23 in the conference combined. And so let's look at this roster. What's the most important thing for University of Arizona? Some people say it's replacing Tet McMillan's production. Ted Arroyo. I know he doesn't like to be called Tet, so I'll respect that. But it's not. That's not it. It's the offensive and defensive lines. That's been the thing that has been Arizona's issue every single time, except for the one decent year they had that caused Jedd Fisch to leave. So if you're looking for any bright spots out of University of Arizona this year, I would say that Tennessee Chattanooga wide receiver Javin Watley is awesome. He's awesome. I don't think you can win a conference with an awesome slot receiver, but he's somebody that I expect to see making a Sports Center top 10 play 2 or 3 times this year. Just an absolutely electric athlete. And on the defensive side, they got a couple of guys that I really like. Genesis Smith is one of them.
Was very much hoping he'd head this way when he entered the transfer portal.
Yeah. When he decided to stick it out, right? So I think that they've got some really good pieces, but is this a puzzle you're even going to finish? They want Brent Brennan out the door. They feel, they can't take any of their angst out on Jedd Fisch because he's gone. And he took 23 staff members with him. So all they can really do is be upset at a really nice guy who has proven time and time again that he's a great evaluator of talent, especially at the high school level. When he was at San Jose State, anytime a player ended up being on Arizona State's radar, they already had a San Jose State offer. He was really, really good, and him and his entire staff were really good at identifying guys who were eventually going to be the guy. And that's something that I think they could use if they give him a few years runway to build up the talent the way that they did with Jedd Fisch. But I think because they went into last year with expectations, they come into this year with Brent Brennan being on his last legs. And it's such a inconvenient place for a head coach to be, to not have 2 to 3 years to build the identity of what it is you're going to build. And I just don't think they're strong enough on the offensive or defensive lines. Noah Fafita hasn't shown much without Ted Roy McMillan, but I don't think he's going to be the one to really drop off. I think the issue is going to be he's going to be running for his life. Can they keep him healthy? Who's their backup? Braden Locke from Wisconsin.
I think. Yeah. They had
one of his biggest issues was Wisconsin not being able to protect him, and that's Wisconsin, where every single offensive lineman was a 6'3", 300-pound sixth grader. So, I don't know. I'm really, really down on this year's version of University of Arizona, but Javin Watley's, I think he could be a star. Genesis Smith could be a star. I think they'll do some positive things, flash a couple of really cool things, and then ultimately turn their backs on that coach and be back in the market for a new coach. Who knows? Maybe like a GJ Kinney or something like that heading into next year.
Already got some hot and bold takes. There you go. All right, 1 for 1.
All right, Ralph, let's talk about a team that's on the other end of the spectrum, a team that's getting a lot of love, Baylor. I mean, I know there's one of your recent Sun Devil Spaces guests super high on Baylor. Watch out, Waco.
Super high on something.
So just, ultimately though, with, of course they got a quarterback just like ASU that's kind of, getting a lot of preseason buzz and hype behind him. Just overall, how dangerous do you think the boys from Jennifer Love Hewitt's hometown will be?
Oh man. Well, here's what Baylor did last summer, to reference our girl Jennifer Love Hewitt. They brought in Jake Spavital to be their offensive coordinator. They went from 101st to a top 20 offense. And that's with Dave Aranda having the absolute hottest of hot seats. And so you got to be really impressed with the way that they performed. Sawyer Robertson is getting a lot of hype.
A lot.
Yeah. And so it's really just going to be what they're able to do with him in that offense. Last year's team, though, they still lost 5 games. They also lost games that they shouldn't have, and so I don't know if I think I don't see them finishing any higher than 5th in the conference. They added Travion Barnes from Florida International. He's like a middle linebacker that is an absolute tackling machine. That can be good. And then they got a big dude out of Ohio State, Calvin Simpson Hunt, and they got another really big lineman, Amarion Winston, out of Oregon.
Yeah.
And those guys didn't really play at their previous destination. And so what they're hoping is that they'll be, plug and play guys at this level. But their first 6 games, Auburn, SMU, Kansas State, Arizona State. So if they don't go at least 2-2 over those 4, then I don't think they have a legitimate shot to win the conference anymore at all. It'll be interesting to see if Dave Aranda, who was on the hot seat all year last year, kind of reverts back into that. Supposed to be a defensive head coach. That's where they're supposed to be, leading from, and the defense wasn't good last year. The offense saved them. And so unless they get out of those first 4 of Auburn, SMU, Kansas State, and Arizona State at 2-2 or above, I think it could be a really messy season, but I'd give them a top 5 finish in the conference.
Yeah, they got some issues there in the secondary, so maybe they're playing some vintage Big 12 ball with come this fall. And of course, that's ASU's conference opener on the road. Difficult trip to Waco, but kind of a sneaky tough game coming off of that Baylor trip is when TCU comes to town. Of course, a couple years ago they were the darlings of the sport. Some rough times, kind of sliding back a little bit. Where do you see the Horned Frogs this year?
Well, they won 9 games last year, but they lost to a Houston team that averaged 14 points a game, and they lost by 11. And they also their game against Stanford was dangerously close, like a game that you could have seen them losing. And so I think Josh Hoover isn't getting as much hype as Sawyer Robertson, and I think the reason for that is people are maybe looking past this level. This is still college football, and I think that's what matters the most. We should be thinking about what they're going to do as a college football quarterback. He threw for 4,000 yards last year. He had a very good pass blocking offensive line. I think they're going to get Cade Bennett back, who's a superstar, grew up an ASU fan, unfortunately, in Arizona high school football, and he's like 23, 24 at this point. And so I think the offensive line will be even better. I just don't really trust the defense. They got a couple of decent pass rushers, a couple of decent run stuffers, but outside of Bud Clark at safety, I don't really trust any of them. And they've got a tough schedule. If you gave TCU BYU's schedule, I'm thinking that's maybe an 11-win team. But they actually have kind of a tough schedule. And, they lost to a UCF last year. They lost to UCF. Sonny Dykes has never really been able to field a defense that is respectable or plays complementary football with what they do offensively. And so I don't trust them. I'd put them maybe around 7th in the conference. Dangerous offense, though.
Utah is kind of a trendy pick for a bounce back team. Some folks even really have them in strong contention for the conference title. Obviously, the college football playoff, a big catalyst for those predictions, I'm sure, is a guy that you're familiar with, and that's quarterback Devin Dampier coming over from New Mexico. Of course, the Saguaro grad, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us what we need to know about Dampier. How do you see that move from the G5, G6 level up to the Big 12 going for him? And ultimately, what's your outlook for the Utes?
Devin Dampier is maybe you guys know I loved Khalil Tate when he was in Arizona. He's kind of in that mold, more of a runner than a passer, but you cannot disrespect him as a passer. He will make you pay. Devin Dampier ran for 800 yards in his last 6 games at New Mexico. he didn't just go to Utah. He followed Jason Beck, New Mexico's offensive coordinator, to Utah. So he's not going to be like behind the eight ball or having to learn too much of anything different. What's going to be interesting is they have two very different philosophies on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. On the defensive side of the ball, they're still trying to do what they've always done: take a 2-star, develop him into an NFL draft pick, like they did with Lecky Fotu, who was 2-star coming out of Texas and ended up a 4th-round pick in the NFL draft at like 6'5", 330. Right? They're still doing that level of development on the defensive side of the ball. But on offense, they went into the portal at quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, and I think maybe even one of their offensive linemen. It'll be very interesting to see if they can mix strategies that way, have a developmental defense. I think they took one cornerback out of UC Davis who's expected to get a lot of playing time. But other than that, this is pretty much Utah's defense from last year, still coached by Morgan Scalley, who is the head coach in waiting out there. I think the secret sauce for Utah might be lost because George Reister had an interview with Kyle Whittingham where he was saying, like, you guys like to develop. We're in the age of the portal. What do you do about that? And he said, we have to quicken everything. We have to shorten everything up, shorten our timeline, simplify our playbook. And so I'm listening to these quotes and I'm like, man, if Utah's really outside their game plan of what makes them great, then I'm not 100% sure this year is going to work in the way they want it to. I'm thinking maybe max 8 wins. And a middle. I mean, I think they're a bowl team for sure. But I think it's a bigger climb out of that hole. I don't think it's just, bouncing like a Super Bowl back to the top of the conference. I think that if this Devin Dampier thing doesn't work out, then it's going to be a tough year because there's a lot of really good offenses in this conference, and you can't play every single game just trying not to have the dam break defensively. You've got to score points. So much is on Devin Dampier right now. Last year, they went into the season with a 25-year-old quarterback and a 25-year-old running back. And then they had depth issues beyond that. They're going to have depth issues if Dampier doesn't work or if these receivers don't work. They will run into the same issues they've run into the last 2 years. So if everybody stays healthy, dangerous team. If this season goes like every season goes for Utah with their physicality, I think they fall off toward the end. So I'm not looking at Utah as someone who's going to challenge to win the conference this year. They're in tough out territory.
All right. So when the schedule came out, a lot of folks had this as a potential candidate for Big 12 game of the year. ASU hosting Texas Tech. A lot has been said. A lot has been written about what Texas Tech did over the course of the offseason, backing up the Brinks truck and the best team that money could buy. What kind of ROI, though, do you think the Red Raiders are going to get with their investment?
Yeah, it's an awesome question because a lot of money spent doesn't equate to value. Sometimes you have to look at the way that the money was spent. Now,
is that shout out the Suns?
Yeah. Yes. I mean, really, that's a great comparison. But another way to look at it is, have you ever been in an auction fantasy draft?
Yeah, that's the format that my league uses.
Okay, so let's say that you have like $20 left at the end of your auction fantasy draft, right? And you don't have a kicker yet, and you can't take any of that money with you. And so the best kicker gets nominated for bidding, and you've got $20. Nobody's going to spend $20 on a kicker, but you need one. You're trying to end your draft early, so you just go all in with all $20, right?
I've spent $10 on Boswell before.
There you go. So, but that doesn't mean that the kicker is worth more than you would pay for some of your receivers or your running backs. That is not what that means. And so when we're looking at some of the money, not all, but some of the money that Texas Tech spent, you got to look at how they spent it. When they went all in on their last defensive lineman, the transfer from Stanford, that was in a window that didn't exist with any other team. They fired Troy Taylor for being mean to interns or whatever. And some Stanford players realized that if they went into the portal, they would go into the portal in a completely empty market. So if you're a receiver or an offensive lineman or a defensive lineman, everybody would be bidding with all the money they had left, if that makes sense. So I think Texas Tech dropped like $4 million on a defensive lineman from Stanford.
So David Bailey, right?
Yeah, and who in an open market would not have commanded 7 figures over a 2-year period. So some of it is just the resources you have at the time that you have them. So I would say, like, for ASU fans looking at Texas Tech and saying, oh, did they build the best team that money can buy? Should we be scared of them? They're going to be very good, but this is still a team that is dependent upon Baron Morton at quarterback, who is not really somebody who has pushed the ball down the field. I think he, even last year, averaged maybe low 7s in yards per attempt. And there's a world of expectation on this guy's shoulders. And sometimes it really comes down to who you have at quarterback. Now, I said that, and then I'm going to turn around and say the reason I'm scared of Texas Tech is because I think Mac Leftwich is one of the hottest names on the coordinator market, and they went out and got him. And Mac Leftwich, we saw him tear up Arizona State as the OC for Texas State. And he had Jordan McLeod, with a career high 8.2 yards per pass attempt. And so it's possible that Mac Leftwich is able to take Baron Morton and do some really special things with him. They'll be better defensively than they usually are. I don't think they've had 3 seasons in a row with a winning record in conference in well over 20 years, probably not in this millennium. And so if they're able to pull that off, it would really be going against the grain of Texas Tech history. I think they're still probably vulnerable in certain areas, and I don't think the D-line and O-line will come together as well as they're hoping, but they'll definitely be better than last year. I think they're the most dangerous team on Arizona State's schedule, and Arizona State's going to need every bit of the home field advantage if they're going to get out of that one with a win.
So another candidate for a potential conference game of the year comes a little bit later on, November 1st, ASU heading to Ames, take on Iowa State in a conference title game rematch. Of course, the Cyclones lost a couple of 1,000-yard receivers, but still return several key components. What's your read on Iowa State? I believe in Matt Campbell's 10th year now. Time flies.
Yeah, so they just broke through that glass ceiling of never having double-digit wins. They came very close to winning the conference last year. I think Arizona State was a bad matchup. Arizona State was peaking. They were bigger. They were more physical. And I think that's what a lot of people look at with Iowa State. And they say, like, they're well coached, obviously. Taylor Mauser is a Basha High School product, the guy who's running their offense out there. He's done a fantastic job, but are they big enough to compete with the size that Texas Tech's bringing in, with the offensive and defensive lines of Utah and BYU? They clearly weren't with Arizona State. I think that the 2 things that people are talking about with this team, though, are a little bit overblown. With one being their defense was awful last year, and they got away with having an awful defense. One of the reasons their defense was awful is because Caleb Bacon and Will McLaughlin, their 2 best linebackers, went out for the season almost immediately. They're both back. So I think that that's going to help them on the defensive side of the ball, and they will progress to the mean just a little bit. And the other thing is Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins both having 1,100 yards receiving is not something that you're going to be able to replace. But as Arizona State fans, we understand that you're not trying to get a 1-for-1 on these. They went into the portal. They got Xavier Townsend from UCF, who's a decent deep threat, and Chase Sowell from East Carolina, who a lot of people wanted a whole lot, and who flashed some talent. And so if Rocco Becht is the reason that Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins put up those numbers, then you're going to see other guys get numbers as well. They had one of the most injury-depleted defenses last year. Unless that happens again, I think they'll be better. But they do have a schedule that has Arizona State on it. They have a schedule that I believe begins with Kansas State, who is going to be one of the better teams in the conference this year. And then they also, I think they have to play TCU and Colorado I think it's gonna be a tough season for them. I don't think I don't know. I think they'll come close to maybe making the conference championship, but I just don't see them as having the talent to make it happen.
So Colorado is a really tough team to peg. They go a lot of different directions. They lose a lot of talent, and not just those, top 2 players that people are going to think of. A lot more names beyond that are gone from the roster, but they signed some solid high school players, did a lot in the transfer portal. If you ask me, I think this is going to be the demand for Deion Sanders to do the best coaching job that he's ever done, especially, his quarterback's not going to share his last name. So it's going to be real interesting to see what goes on there at Boulder. How do you see things shaking out for the Buffs?
I think they'll be better. I think they'll be better than they were last year. And I think a big reason why is they were set up to showcase a couple of players. It was a showcase team. It's the way that like club basketball teams are put together with a bunch of cannon fodder and 2 guys that are really great and who are going to take, 65 of the 80 shots that people put up. So I think they'll be a little more balanced this year. And it's like, you think you want these superstar players and you think that's what's going to make you good. It's like being a little kid and having the Ferrari poster on your wall and being like, I want to marry a 10 and I want to drive a red sports car. And then you realize like the burdens that come along with driving a sports car and having to follow around a 10, right? Like you wouldn't think that you would be happier with a Corolla and a woman who could cook. You wouldn't think that. But the truth of the matter, like, think about it this way. Caden Salter is going to be the quarterback for Colorado next year. Individually, he has more rushing yards over the last 2 years as a quarterback of Liberty than the entire Colorado team. Than the whole team. They have a quarterback who can move his feet now. The cupboard's not bare of offensive linemen. They have who NFL draft scouts are the most excited about at their left tackle position, who still has 2 years of eligibility. They still have good wide receivers. Somehow they keep convincing running backs to commit to this program. And they have a quarterback who has already led a 12-1 campaign at Liberty. I think they will look so much more functional on offense than they have in past years. Shiloh Sanders actually mattered a lot to that defense, believe it or not. I know that people love to post him getting trucked and him getting burned and stuff like that, but he mattered a lot to what they were doing. And they went out and they got the Titan safety Byard, his little brother, out of USF. I think he's better than Shiloh. He's going to step in. I think he's going to make an impact for them. You know what? They were 9-3 last year. I think that they could do that again. And Reginald Hughes, Martavius French, who they brought in at linebacker, are very good. I already brought up Tawfiq Byard, but they got a 6'5", 325-pound defensive tackle in Jaheim Otis. They have size, and they have good coaches on staff. Weird coaches, but they have good coaches on staff. So I think they'll have every opportunity to not only succeed this year, but to actually look more like a functional football team. They won 9 games last year, being, I think, 131st in rushing. And yeah, I thought up until 2024 that was completely impossible. But they did it and Duke did it, being bottom 6 teams in the country and both winning 9 games. So, and what did both of those teams do? They went and replaced their quarterback who could not move his feet with a quarterback who could run. And if he doesn't work out, they have the number 1 recruited quarterback at high school level behind him. So I think they'll look good this year. There's a lot of people rooting on their demise. I just don't see that being the case.
So a couple new head coaches in the Big 12, coincidentally, both doing some homecoming here. You got Rich Rod going back to West Virginia. You got Scott Frost going back to UCF. Obviously, both those guys had incredible successes at those schools, and beyond that, hit or miss to say the least. How do you see things? Are those guys ready to get back into it and have that level of success, or do you think it'll be different this time around for either or both?
I think Scott Frost probably has no shot because the level of success we're talking about getting back to is fake national championship. Like, I don't think he's going to win any fake national championships at UCF this time. So
bold statement. There you go. Another hot take.
The thing I wonder about Scott Frost is if he's going into this year the kind of the same way that Marcus Arroyo and Kenny Dillingham did last year with ASU, knowing that you have a quarterback who gives you some stability as a veteran, but also knowing that in order to build anything, you probably need a multi-year starter. So it's going to be really interesting to me what they do at the quarterback position. And if I'm a UCF fan, I'm like praying that Virginia Tech transfer Davie Belfort is the guy, because he's still got 4 years left of eligibility. But Indiana transfer Taven Jackson, he's your veteran right now. But they don't have the roster to do anything this year. They're not going to look good this year. I think they're going to struggle mightily. They're the only team that I have ahead of University of Arizona, and I could be convinced to turn around and switch that. So I think this year is going to be really rough, but I think that UCF fans know that and are willing to give him some runway because of how you can build through the portal. I think he's going to attract a ton of talent out to Orlando. It's just a matter of, if it doesn't look like they have a quarterback this year and then they recruit over Belfort, who came from Virginia Tech, then they're right. It feels like they're right back in the same position, unless they really strike gold, because there's still some good athletes on the team. There's going to be great athletes available to them in the portal. But if this whole season is just like a scrimmage to get back into coaching form, they're going to look pretty rough. I'm not depending on them to accomplish much of anything this year. On the flip side of that, Rich Rodriguez, his offense at Jacksonville State rushed for 6,500 yards the last 2 seasons combined. That's insane. 6,500 yards over the last 2 years. I think his lead back led the nation in yards last year. And the first thing that he did when he got the West Virginia job, he didn't go out and get like quarterbacks to play over like a Nico Marchiol. They might end up running it back with the same quarterback they had as their backup the last 2 years. He went out and he signed 6 running backs, in addition to the running back that's already on the roster, who is their best returning player. They're going to run the hell out of the football, and they're going to do it right away. And I think that that's going to give them the opportunity to possibly surprise some people, maybe even make a bowl this season. Defense is going to be junk, in my opinion. But I have a feeling he's going to come in with a really, really well-defined philosophy. And I don't think anybody in the Big 12 is going to be running the ball the way that West Virginia is going to be running the ball. So I think Rich Rod's going to get people excited immediately. And I think Scott Frost, you're really going to have to wait until the end of next year to even make any judgments on what the direction of the program is.
So in these dog days of summer leading up to fall camp, when the news is a little light, no team in the Big 12 has been talked about quite as much as BYU in the last month or so. If you ask BYU fans, however, that the reason for that subject matter is maybe not as big of a deal as those outside the program might think. Of course, we're talking about the whole things going on with Jake Retzlaff and him parting ways from the program. So on this topic, first, what are your thoughts on that whole Jake Retzlaff situation, and how do you see his departure affecting this team this year?
You're asking how I feel about premarital sex?
There you go. Let's let's keep the hot topics going, my friend.
Hey, rules are rules, man. Like that's the whole, like the whole thing at BYU is you have an honor code, you're representing that university. And it wasn't necessarily important for him to follow that. And so, they said, hey, we're not married to you either. They sent him on his way. And there has been an interesting turn for sure of, one of the reasons we went 7-2 in conference was Jake Retzlaff, to the reason we weren't 9-0 in conference is Jake Retzlaff. And as an ASU fan, yeah, maybe. I mean, I think we're trying to tell you the guy's all right, but he didn't win you that game. And to me, it was kind of on him for the way he played in the first half and the interception that he threw that sealed the game for Arizona State until clocks stopped working the way that clocks do. We did in this year's interview with Kenny Dillingham, we did ask him if he has stopped letting the microwave stop at 1 second, if he just lets it run to the beep instead of trying to time it where you open the microwave door before you get all the way down. And he said, no, I always let it run down. The problem is after I open the microwave, sometimes 1 second gets put back on the clock. So that was a pretty incredible answer. Yeah, I don't know. It's going to be hard for me to root against Trayson Bourget if they give him the job playing quarterback out there. Their running situation is like they might have the only guaranteed feature back who I would trust with 250 touches in the conference, and he's just a sophomore. And I say that that's probably what they should do, is they should feed the ball to LJ Martin. Their offensive line averages 6'4", 315. And they have just the softest early schedule. And if they can beat Colorado in Boulder, they could go into the Holy War at 6-0. But then it's Utah, Iowa State, Texas Tech, and TCU all in a row. And I think that's probably where it falls apart for them. So I would expect a whole lot of chest beating from our Provo faithful through the first couple of months of the season, and then maybe just a little bit quieter toward the end of November. But man, they got a workhorse running back, and sometimes football is pretty simple. You stop the run, you run the ball, and I think they'll probably be able to effectively do both of those things.
So moving on, Oklahoma State. Man, they used to be like a superpower. When the whole news of ASU coming to the Big 12 happened, like that was a team, at least, one of the ones that was in the conference ASU was going into, that you're kind of concerned about. But man, have they been erratic over the last handful of years. 12 wins in 2021, down to 7 in 22, back up to 10 in 23, and they won 3 games last year. Really feels like things are circling the drain. I'm not super familiar with them, but it just doesn't seem like they've made the kind of pickups that give you a lot of hope they're going to bounce back. I'm kind of the belief that Mike Gundy, might be on borrowed time there. What do you see there? Do you think that the Gundy era is kind of nearing its end in Stillwater?
Yeah, because he's course correcting, but I don't know if it's coming too late. He said this is the first transfer class they've ever paid for.
Find that hard to believe.
Yeah, you had a couple of years. He did give the quote before last season, right before it started. He's like, season starting, tell your agents to stop calling me. We'll talk after the season, like no in-season renegotiating. So, but he says it's a first transfer class he's paid for. They went into last year with the oldest and most experienced offensive line and a Heisman candidate at running back. And we all just looked at that and said, sure, why not? He's got 15 winning seasons in a row. Should probably work out. They went 0-9 in conference, and they gave up 36 points per game. They now move to their third defensive coordinator in 3 years, maybe fourth in 4 years. And the guy that they chose, and then this is what Mike Gundy's job hinges upon. The guy they chose is a guy by the name of Todd Grantham. Todd Grantham is the reason a lot of people believe Florida has been in a free fall for years now, because Dan Mullen was actually having a pretty decent run at Florida. And the Florida fans did not like Todd Grantham. They did not like the defense. They thought that's the thing that was ultimately letting them down. They wanted him fired so bad, and Dan Mullen was very loyal to Todd Grantham, and it ended with both of them losing their job. This is the first time Todd Grantham is going to run a defense since that run. So the guy that you're depending on fixing everything after your massive free fall is the one who Florida fans believe is at the heart of being responsible for a lot of their struggles over the last few years. So I don't know, man. It doesn't seem very promising to me. I don't love them at the quarterback position. I don't love them at the receiver position. Um, but they'd probably be better at running back, maybe. That just not having expectations on them. But defensively, I don't know what they added. I really don't. It's not like they went out and replaced the entire secondary. I don't think they did. I don't think that they got a whole bunch of guys in the portal. They got a middle linebacker from Akron named Brian McCoy. That's who they are depending on to get them back to being one of the top teams in the conference. And I think it's going to be a bad year.
Todd Grantham, whenever I hear that name, I just think of the Shutdown Fullcast and just talking about his emotional blitzing and just, obviously led to his struggles. All right. So before we close out with a look at some national picture type stuff, let's put a cap on the Big 12 talk with some real questions here. All right, Ralph, who are the true Big 12 contenders this year? And part two, who ultimately faces off in Arlington?
I think the real contenders going into the season are Texas Tech, Arizona State, and Kansas State. I do like that Arizona State and Kansas State don't play each other, and that's what makes me feel like that would be a great pick for the eventual conference championship. I like Kansas State's coaching staff. I like Avery Johnson. I like the running back that they're returning. They're pretty decent at wide receiver. And Austin Romaine, sophomore linebacker. Joe, I think he'd be your favorite player that wasn't a Sun Devil. I really do. He's awesome. He's so much fun to watch. He's the quarterback of that defense, and he's going into his junior year. And I just think he's just a human wrecking ball. And if the rest of the defense around him can step up and he stays healthy, I think that they could be special. I think Arizona State's the better team talent-wise. But I love all these coaches that came out of the North Dakota State tree. Chris Kleiman is the second best of all of them, outside of Craig Bohl, who was Chris Kleiman's boss before he left, and Kleiman won titles after that. And so, they run the same defense pretty much as Arizona State. It's kind of like a 5-2 answers-based, situation. But I don't know. I think that it would be really, really cool to see Arizona State and Kansas State face off for the conference championship. Just knocking on the door is Iowa State, but the size thing is alarming for me. And I do think that Baylor has what it takes to be in the mix. And Aranda's a defensive guy, and I want to trust that while the offense will stay good, he'll up his game, and that'll make them a little bit of a threat. But I like ASU and Kansas State at the end of the year.
Now, so this question is going to be kind of sound a little hypocritical, but is there a team that you predict to be in the bottom tier of the conference that you could also see, having a big turnaround, a la not just ASU, but BYU and Colorado also last year?
Yeah, there's two of them actually, Houston and Cincinnati. I'm a huge Brandon Sorsby fan. And I know I'll get on these kicks of just being like obsessed with one quarterback, right? And sometimes I look like a genius, and sometimes I don't. Like you'll find posts of mine from 2016 when Josh Allen had started one game at Wyoming, where I'm like, this is the next Aaron Rodgers. And I think you guys know better than anyone that I was freaking out about Brock Purdy when he was a junior in high school. And I'm not surprised by the success of either one of them. Now, I also was a big Khalil Tate fan, and my other biggest miss of my life was actually a Cincinnati quarterback. It was Tony Pike. Because I don't think I'd ever seen a 6'6" guy with a rainbow ball outside of Derek Anderson before. And I just fell in love with him and Brian Kelly's offense. I didn't know who Brian Kelly was at the time and what he does to juice the quarterback stats. But those are my two biggest misses ever. But I feel really good about Brendan Sorsby. I thought he looked great. I thought he looked like a pro against Arizona State. He makes a lot of tight throws into tight windows. He's like 6'3", 230. And I feel like he plays the way that everyone wants me to believe that Drew Aller from Penn State is supposed to play. Like Drew Aller is supposed to be this great future number one pick. And I'm like, what does he do that Brendan Sorsby doesn't? I don't see it. And so I think I'm big on him as a quarterback. I don't like Scott Satterfield as a coach, but I love the entire talent of the whole Cincinnati roster. And they are 4 years off of playing in a college football playoff. So you would think that maybe they'd have the ability to at least figure it out to have a winning season. So they're one that I have at 12 personally, but I could see be at like 4 or 5. And then the other one is Houston. And Houston averaged 14 points a game last year. They were the worst offense in America. I think they scored 18 touchdowns total on the season. So I didn't Scat have more than that.
Like
So
22, 23.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if, they'll be better at quarterback. I don't think you can be worse. They hired Slade Nagel to be their offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator that Willie Fritz had at Tulane that helped him get this Houston job. So, they had a top 40 scoring defense last year, despite the defense always being on the field. So what if they move the ball and maintain that level of defensive pressure? That could be a really, really good team. They brought in 5 new offensive linemen, 3 new wide receivers, and Connor Weigman from Texas A&M to be their quarterback. If he stays healthy and he's even somewhat functional, they'll be so much better than they were last year. I have them personally finishing 13th, but they're another team that if the defense stays and the offense moves the ball, why couldn't they go 9-3, 10-2, and surprise some people? Willie Fritz was very, very good at Tulane, and he could possibly duplicate it. And they got a 5-star quarterback coming in, so they got to do something. They got to show this guy Keyshawn Henderson that they can move the ball offensively, I think, if they want to keep his commitment. So those are the two I think that everyone is looking at as tackling dummies for everybody else that I think could be a big surprise in the way that Arizona State was last year.
So shifting gears to a national scope now, obviously last year was the first year of the expanded playoff format. Now it's easy to approve of it, of course, since ASU made the college football playoff last year, but in general, how do you like that format? How do you like that expansion? Is it the right move? What are your thoughts on the playoff format as it is?
If you ever watched FCS football, there's never once ever been an argument about who the champion is. Ever. And last year we had the 8th seed win out and leave no doubt at all that they were the best team in college football. I'm very interested in what a lot of coaches have said about, like, hey, the BCS system wasn't evil, it just wasn't inclusive. So what if we take the committee out of it, go back to being formula based, and then run it that way? And I think that would be a very interesting way to get 12 teams in. Then it really just becomes about, like, who is the formula valuing? Because, ESPN uses their college football power index, and it's so skewed toward the SEC that often at the end of the year, you'll have teams that beat other teams ranked behind them in the final power index ranking. And I think that that's a hallmark of a system that ultimately doesn't do the job at the end of the day. So what formula are you using? I don't think that I think all of the arguments that Lane Kiffin made this year, or the Alabama fans made this year, I think all of them fell on deaf ears. I think when you lose to Kentucky, shut up. You didn't win your conference and you lost to Kentucky. At least Arizona State won its conference. Yeah, they lost to Cincinnati, but they won the conference, right? That matters. And they almost beat Texas, should beat Texas. But this whole thing of, like, Ole Miss deserving to get in and Alabama deserving to get in when they couldn't even score on Oklahoma and Oklahoma wasn't good. It's ridiculous. Like that crybaby stuff is always going to happen. It's always going to take place. But last year, I felt like we had an absolute, true national champion. And who knows what would have happened 2 years ago if Jordan Travis had been healthy and Florida State got in, or if Georgia had gotten in. I think a lot of people believe Georgia was potentially the biggest threat, and they dismantled Florida State. They look like a team that could have won a championship from being outside the top 4. So I love 12. I could imagine 16, even though it feels like the season's maybe getting a little bit too long, and some of the games that are in there are very pointless. Like the way the SEC plays the Citadel and East Tennessee and Furman in November. That stuff to me can all really go away. I don't care if it's 8 conference games or 9. But some uniformity in the way that schedules take place. And I think that auto bids are so anti-competitive. I think that if you have a BCS formula that you can trust, that's going to honor the fact that the SEC is a better conference overall than the Big 12, then let's trust the formula. Let's not like that. The advocacy for auto bids feels so against the entire idea of a playoff in the first place. I think if you win your conference, you should get in, and the rest of it should really be body of work. And if we have a computer or a calculator that can do that job better than people, sitting around watching college football on iPads, let's institute that. If not, let's just keep running with the way we have it now. The auto bid stuff is so corny. And that's really the only thing I want to stay away from. And it's not advocating for the Big 12 or the SEC. It's just advocating against this idea that you would need guaranteed spots or more guaranteed spots when the formula should really reflect that, like it has in years past, and the committee has as well, reflect respect toward the conferences that play tougher schedules, have more of a blue chip rating. The SEC and Big Ten get plenty of respect, and I don't think it's at risk. I really don't. So anything that stays away from auto bids, I'm totally cool with, including and not limited to, maybe Arizona State as a conference winner, or Boise State doesn't get put above an Oregon or something like that. It being lower ranked but higher ranked when it comes to playoff seedings. I'm cool with all of those adjustments. I just want to stay away from auto bids altogether. I loved the college football playoff last year. I thought 12 was the right amount, and man, it was a lot of fun having ASU in it. And I think that probably skews my view of it as well. I think it works great.
All right. So, of course, one of the national things that generates the most talk, controversy, buzz, the Heisman Trophy. ASU has at least at this point, a legitimate candidate. I think we touched on it last time you were on the show, but how real do you think Sam Levitt's Heisman chances are? Of course, this is coming after a season which Scat, just missed getting the trip to New York. So could be interesting ASU having back-to-back seasons with a guy in the mix.
I think his chances are as real as it gets. And one of the reasons is, this is going to sound ridiculous, but hang with me on it. Kenny Dillingham plays video games. He's played franchise mode on NCAA. He played decades of it. I know that to be true. And there are things you have to do in that video game to get your players all the awards they're going to get. And some of it includes activities that might be frowned upon when you're up 4 or 5 touchdowns. I think the video game works like real life, and I think that Kenny Dillingham knows that. And so if you're in a situation where the expectation is already there and all you have to do is go out and meet it, I'm comfortable with Sam Levitt throwing 2 touchdown passes late in the third quarter against an NAU. I just am. And I think he has a coaching staff that understands that. It really just comes down to whether or not he can execute. I think he's been given all the tools. There's an experienced offensive line. There's a lot of talent at running back, both in expectation and previous performance. The tight end room is absolutely stacked. And even if the receivers don't live up to the step up that I think, and I think you guys think they're going to take, they still bring back somebody who was targeted at a rate that rivaled Calvin Johnson's Georgia Tech days. So I think that, if everybody's healthy, there's going to be stats. And they're one of the only teams this year, and I think one of the gambling sites actually put it out, that I expected them to be favored in every single game this year, especially with a couple of the home games they have and the recent history against Iowa State. But I think it came out that they're one of 5 teams that are currently expected to be favored from a gambling perspective in all 12 contests, all 12 scheduled contests. And so I think it's a very, very friendly schedule, and against a bunch of not great defenses and a coach that has played a lot of video games. And so to me, that's what makes it an incredibly realistic proposition. You can't control what anybody else does. It helps to have a dual threat. Josh Hoover's going to put up stats, but he doesn't run. We saw Brian Kelly talk about Garrett Nussmeier in SEC Media Day. He said he has to put on a coat of armor and go out and run, because these coaches, all these coaches that make 10 plus million per year look pedestrian when their quarterbacks aren't taking the available yards. Caleb Williams did not run as a senior at USC, and Lincoln Riley is 15-11 since the start of that. And he's going into his 3rd season with a non-primarily mobile quarterback, or that being the offensive strategy. He also looked pretty human as a coach when he had Spencer Rattler back when he was at Oklahoma. And so for Brian Kelly to already be talking scared, even though he's got a returning quarterback who threw for 4,000 yards, saying that he needs to go and run, makes me think that he knows what a lot of these coaches all over the country know. If your quarterback doesn't get out and pick up yards on their own, there's really a ceiling to what you can do. We saw it with Colorado last year. We saw it with Duke last year. Both of them have remedied that situation and moved on to quarterbacks that can run around. So I think it's ASU's in a premium place for what they're bringing to the table at the quarterback position and how it's going to be used. I think the rushing stats will be factored in a great deal. And I think it's legit, even though the last time I was on your show, I came on here and I thought the hype was fabricated, that it came from absolutely nowhere. But if he plays like he played the last half of the season, he's going to do some really special things.
So a little earlier, you talked about Houston and Cincinnati being the possible this year's ASU in the Big 12. So aside from those teams and outside the Big 12 on a national scale, are there teams that you can think of that could possibly be in that same ASU level as far as ones that are, overcoming some very, very minimal expectations?
Do you have a minute to talk about our Lord and Savior, the Wyoming Cowboys?
There we go.
Just kidding. They're going to suck. National level, people looking down on them.
Maybe not as dramatic as ASU, because that's very rare, but just someone that could enter the viable playoff conversation that really isn't a part of that conversation now.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good question. I think it really depends on the conference. So in, let's say, the ACC, I think that maybe a lot of people aren't looking at Pitt. My peace treaty with Pitt fans. I think that maybe a lot of people aren't looking at Pitt or taking them seriously because they started out 7-0 and then they lost 6 games in a row. But the linebacking unit that they have there is one of the most elite in pass coverage in the country. They have a freaky good running back room with multi-talented players that kind of remind me of LaRod Stevens-Howling or even Shady McCoy. Eli Holstein might be one of the best passers in the country. I think he's a guaranteed 300-yard game the way they run that offense. So Pitt is a team to me that I don't think anybody's picking to maybe make a run. They get Miami late. I think last game of the season they host Miami, and we know how Mario Cristobal is when things are on the line and it's late in the season. We've seen him fall apart a little bit. So maybe there's an opportunity for Pitt to overtake Miami at the end of the season. That'd be pretty cool. I'm trying to think in the Big Ten. It's not news that Illinois is kind of this sexy, Well, there's nothing sexy about Illinois at all. If you ever get the opportunity, look up the best 15 football players to come out of Illinois. There's one guy who played for the Packers in like the 1950s who in uniform for the Packers looks 1,000 years old. I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head. He's like the second greatest football player to ever come out of Illinois outside of Dick Butkus.
Like something they would have found in Indiana Jones and Last Crusade when they're searching for the or you know.
Is this like some Red Grange erasure?
Could be him. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't recognize the guy, but he looked as old as Terry Bradshaw looks now in a Packers uniform. They don't have a great football history. There is nothing.
Is that Ray Nitschke or is that Nitschke?
It's possible. Right. I'll look it up. But I would say that, like, yeah, there's nothing sexy about Illinois. Yeah, Brett Bielema, like, they play solid defense. They punt when they have to. But Luke Altmaier, I think, is a great quarterback. They're returning like 18 starters from the bowl. They've had so much continuity in their defensive staff since losing Ryan Walters, who is now at Washington, was the head coach of Purdue, who got fired and is the reason we got a couple of transfers. But they I think are very, very solid, and I could see them making the college football playoff. I don't know how many people expect that to happen. I do. I don't think they'll be this year's Indiana because I don't know if they're going to score points like that. But I think they have a pretty friendly schedule, and they could be like a third or fourth Big Ten team in without auto bids. They'll just make it, and it'll be fantastic. And then in the SEC, people that, man, I don't know. I'm never going to believe Texas A&M is ever going to do anything. I think that Kentucky's got the most expensive 3-9 coaching roster in history.
Yeah, they're gonna be bad. They're gonna be real bad.
Yeah, it's very possible that they are putrid. But I don't know. The SEC, has all of this expectation that I guess LSU, if you believe that Brian Kelly is just a guy who's going to go like 9-3 and not win any big games and miss the college football playoff, I think you'll be unpleasantly surprised this year when they actually they make a run. I saw someone today affiliated with On3 pick them to win the national championship. I don't think that's going to happen. Because they pay $2.5 million a year for a defensive coordinator that they got from Missouri to give up 35 points a game against ranked opponents over the last 2 years. Over the last 3 years, the stat stays the exact same. So they're terrible on defense. Defense wins championships. I don't think they're going to a championship, but I think they're good enough offensively. They got a sophomore running back who's a freak. Maybe they'll make the college football playoff. I don't know how many people expect that to happen, but they'd be one I think will overperform expectations.
All right, Ralph, last one for you. So Joe and I are going to be saving our picks for our season preview episode here in a couple weeks, but that means we're going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Does ASU go back to the playoff this year?
I think they do. Yeah, I think they do. And I think that one or two bids from the Big 12, I think they can make it.
Oh, all right. Easier said than done. Yeah. All right. I think that's an episode. I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Hot damn.
Ralph, how you feeling?
I feel good. I didn't make it weird. The entire episode, I wanted to talk about this new show that I've been watching, and I couldn't find a way to work it in. And I didn't force it. I said other weird things, but not as many as usual. I feel like I stayed on topic. And I think if this is the first time that anybody's ever listened to me on your show, they're going to think I know stuff about college football. And that's
a normal, well-adjusted adult too. And by the by, haven't forgotten the oath and commitment I made. No later than the day before. Well, I guess that would be August the 29th.
Friday, August 29th.
By then, I will have watched The Devil Wears Prada.
Got to be like streamed. We have to. The viewing's got to be streamed.
It might be. Yeah, this will be a comprehensive, immersive experience for all to engage in. But I am a man of my word, even though if that word includes some procrastination,
Some. This is like when we got the Manny Pacquiao Floyd Mayweather fight 6 years after it was supposed to happen, when Manny Pacquiao was a congressman with bad labrums.
It's the showman in me. You know, it's building up intensity, building up suspense and anticipation. It's all that pro wrestling watching. It's a storyline. It's a gimmick. You know,
what's happening first? Joe watches the movie Grand Theft Auto 6. ASU plays LSU.
I gotta watch the movie.
I think he's a man of his word. I think he'll hold to it. I think he'll watch it this August. I just wonder if, like, I think I've turned on it. I was like, it's a good movie. I think it got Oscar nominations. It's legitimately funny. It's a little bit feminine. You're a manly man, and so I could see why it wouldn't necessarily be on the top of your list to go out and watch it.
I got a very girly girl in my life whom I adore, so that's a perfect combination right there.
Yeah. And it's the debut of Emily Blunt, and that's very cool. And Meryl Streep, you know, whether you care about that type of stuff or not, she is the GOAT, and she does a very good job. And it's a decent movie, but I'm kind of at the point where I'm like, oh, I hope he hates it. Like, there's been so much buildup that I'm like, if he doesn't like it, I'm gonna be like, good. Good. That kind of serves you right, like the amount of buildup. But I do want to know if you are committed at this point to, regardless of how you feel about the first one, are you committing here and now on Speak of the Devils to watching the sequel?
And that hasn't yet been, that's yet to be released, or is that a thing that already exists in this world?
Is currently in production, as they say in the biz. We've seen some stills released from
I mean, that can be a perfect tie-in to a wager for this season. Perhaps if ASU returns to the college foot, we got to up the stakes. Because last year was just bowl eligibility, right? Like that's what got us in this position, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I'll tell you what, but I need a clause in there that if you don't actually watch it before the season starts, it triggers that you have to wait. It triggers that you have to wait, and you have to watch them out of order.
Okay, I'm going to do it because I feel like this could, you know, come back at me in a lot of ways. So that'll happen, and then I mean, I'm willing to say if ASU, I guess, returns to the college football playoff, because kind of like you're saying, they're you know, they could win the Big 12. There could be a scenario where they don't and still make it. If ASU returns to the college football playoff, I will watch.
You got to come to the college football playoff wearing Prada. And we might have to GoFundMe that, because I don't have any laying around.
That one we might have to workshop. I can commit to watching the movie. As far as you know, the merchandise that will be worn and who created it, then we'll see about that one. But I am gonna watch the first things first. Before the end of the month of August, before that first football game is played for ASU, obviously there'll be some college football prior to that. It will be in my catalog of watched movies.
Brad, as a cinephile,
that just
for my fellow ASU grads, that is a not an inappropriate
file as
like movies. Yeah, we got to be careful. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so as a cinephile, can you name the other Oscar-nominated and winning film that has a Prada reference, a prominent Prada reference in it? I'll even give you the hint. I'm sorry, my Prada's at the cleaners, along with my hoodie and my FU flip-flops.
I have no idea what that is.
The Social Network.
I saw it once in the theater.
One of the greatest movies ever.
I have not revisited it.
It's not Encino Man, so yeah.
Yeah. Encino Man is also up there.
Number one in our hearts.
If my cousin Vinny can get an Oscar, Encino Man can get an Oscar.
That's a movie that needs a sequel.
Folks, what we're doing right here, right now, that you're actually hearing and seeing, we do this nonsense for about an hour. Every time Ralph joins us, we don't hit record for a good 30 to 60 minutes. And this is the type of, you know, brain trust activity that goes on. So welcome to our world.
Well, since we're already this far off topic, can I tell you the show I've been watching?
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, if for anybody still pressing through, hasn't turned off the episode, what's the show?
So I started a show, and it's not good, and it might be my fault, but it's called Ballard. and it's on Amazon.
It's a Bosch spinoff.
Okay, who is Bosch? What
Okay.
is Bosch?
Okay, well, first off,
Not only is it a Bosch spinoff, I learned tonight
it's a spinoff of the spinoff, right?
Spinoff of something that happens for 5 minutes at the end of a different spinoff. And I'm in the middle of like the 3rd episode, and they'll be like, "You never guess who's about to show up. Guy named Harry Bosch." And they make it a really
Bosch.
big deal. I have no idea who that man is.
You came to the right person. All right. Harry Bosch, or full name Hieronymus Bosch.
Hieronymus.
Hieronymus, yeah, like the painter, but not. So he's a detective, kind of a guy, a grizzled, hard-edged guy.
Hard-edged, like Rich Rod.
That makes me think of all the little promo hype videos they put out with like him in
Hieronymus Rod,
gladiator attire. Hieronymus Bosch is our kind of guy.
He's definitely comes in as a 3-star, and you develop him over time, and all of a sudden, it kind of has that same doesn't like authority, plays by his own rules. But it started as a book series by, I believe, Michael Connolly, which is, I've read the first 4. It's pretty good. Anyway,
you read the book, so you know exactly how often. This is like the time I watched Die Hard 4 first.
Oh Jesus!
What are you doing with your life,
Ralph? Well, I read the books because the show on Amazon ran for like 7 seasons. Very good, very good. It's Jamie Hector, who's Marlowe on The Wire, is his partner. It's a very good show. There was a spinoff, which is like after the events, which is like Bosch Legacy. Have not seen a second of it. And I believe Ballard is another character in the Michael Connolly literary universe that is spun off. And there's like 3 different characters that kind of like the Lincoln Lawyer guy, or like character that I think McConaughey did years ago. That's also a Connolly character. And there's like, they all interweave together.
It feels like becoming a University of Arizona fan in 2024. Like, why am I here? What is this that I'm watching? Why did people like this, and where did they come from?
Just watch the original run of Bosch on Prime. It's great.
So I got to watch 7 seasons of Bosch to understand the 3 terrible episodes of Ballard.
No,
I'll do it. And I'll do it before Joe. I will watch 7 seasons of that show before Joe.
You're motivated by spite.
That's like 3 weeks from now. That's going to be hard.
I will recommend Stick on Apple. That's nice. It's a fun golf show. It's kind of like, yeah, Owen Wilson. It's got some Ted Lasso to it. It's like makes you feel good. Some some enough drama to be interesting, but like it's a good heartwarming show. Mark Maron's pretty good in it.
Owen Wilson's one of those guys that feels like a Sun Devil. Like if you had told me he did a couple years and dropped out, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
That's a whole off-season show. Guys who aren't Sun Devils.
Like Sun Devils?
Yeah.
Like the could-be Sun Devil fantasy draft. We each get our lineup.
Did a semester back in 98.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember the Britney Spears rumors back in the day?
No.
I just remember the Jason Newsted in Dobson High School rumors that he attended, the former bassist of Metallica, that he attended Dobson for like a week in the early 80s. And there were people that swore about it, but obviously couldn't prove a damn thing.
I think Chester Bennington from Lincoln Park went to like 5 different Valley High schools. So shout out to Greenway and the rest of them.
Yeah,
out to hell with Greenway.
But I think it's just because a lot of people at Dobson had side chops, and Jason Newsted was a side chops guy. It would be easy to mistake him for being a student there.
I don't even know how to follow that up other than you might be right.
All right, so Ralph, Ballard, I recommend Stick. Joe, what's your TV? Maybe this is the new segment for when you're on. Entertainment Corner with Ralph.
God, I mean, I haven't really been on anything new, I showed my girlfriend Goodfellas for the first time the other day, and really happy about that. That got a positive review. Again, we're digging into the arc, because it's at that point where you're like, you have to analyze, okay, what are the truly important, shows and movies without really going overboard and, throwing a bunch of stuff out there. Like, what is the top tier pecking order? So
was there a trade? Was there a trade, or was that just I trust you, we're going to watch Goodfellas, there was nothing on the back end that you had to watch in return.
Volunteered to make an Italian dinner, and so that pretty much when you let somebody just kick up on the couch, they usually have 2.5 hours worth of tolerance. It's a fairly lengthy movie, but it moves pretty quickly, and I think it's kind of universally appreciated. I love Godfather, but it's a pretty slow movie. I could see how folks watch that for the first time. The development of it could be something that they don't have the patience for. So that one worked.
I know how hard it is to convince somoone to watch one movie. So
exactly. Well, yeah, that's why
I never thought to bring you DeFalco's.
That's
the cooking scene in Goodfellas, though. I mean, if you're cooking dinner, that's a perfect like that scene makes me hungry 100%.
That's literally what the prison scene when they're like you slicing the garlic with the razor blade and stuff like that. That's exactly what I thought about, and I pointed it out when I was making food because I kind of made it, in the back. I'm not gonna, made it while we're watching, and I'm like, this is kind of what inspired. This is the inspo right there. Yeah.
All right.
Pacino feels like a Sun Devil.
They
all do.
Like Ray Liotta, class of like 78 or something like that.
I can see Ray Liotta as the guy getting an article written in a prominent magazine that makes Michael Crow mad for 30 years.
Oh man, do we bring this thing into our landing now? Do we call it
it's been a little turbulent.
I can't fly.
Just like your flight, we probably only have like 6 people listening right now. So,
All right, for those 6 people, Ralph, how can they stay with you on the social media side of things and all the other places on this here internet that you create great content for?
Follow me on x.com at ballardlover42. No, my name is, you'll find me. I'm out there. Support Unafraid Show if you can. Subscribe to Unafraid Show. We're doing a lot of great college football content. And yeah, ArizonaVarsity.com, still covering high schools in the state of Arizona. Got a nice staff, and a couple of them will be helping me out with some ASU coverage, bringing back the Forecast podcast. And I'll use the term coverage very loosely because it'll be me. So it can only get so serious.
Are you going to bring back the sign segment?
Probably not. A couple of people thought that was funny. A couple more people got offended. I don't know why you would go and listen to somebody else's team-specific podcast. But some people just like to be mad. And so, yeah. I just like to have fun, and I react and I turtle up with the negativity. So probably won't be doing that anymore, but yes, I will for sure. Yes.
Awesome. So good stuff there. Make sure you stay with us on the social media side on Twitter at SOTD Podcast, Instagram at Speak of the Devils. Subscribe on YouTube, follow on Facebook, give me a follow on all things social at BDenny29.
And you can give me a follow at Joe Healey 42, and you'll see the reactions to the guaranteed forthcoming viewing of Devil Wears Prada. And a huge shout out and thank you to our awesome sponsors, of course, Cactus Sports, Jones Auto Group, Burrito Express, DevilsDigest.com, Spaghetti Shack, and Sun Devil Family Charities.
And HomeFieldApparel.com. More info on all that good stuff. Coming soon is the new season. Joe, this is going to be our 15th season.
Man, we can almost drive this whole thing. Unreal. Didn't even honestly know what a podcast was when I started doing one. Just, was in say yes mode. And here we are.
Good stuff. After supporting all our amazing sponsors, make sure to drop us a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. Joe and I will be back in your feeds next week as we preview week 1 of fall camp.